Greetings and welcome to episode number 10 of You Had Me at Halo, where we will talk about everything past, present, and future of one of gaming's most storied franchises. This weekend, we exit one of the darker years in modern history and begin to look ahead to what will hopefully be a better year. And one big thing we all have to look forward, of course, is Halo Infinite at the end of the year. With this being a slow news time, we thought it'd be a lot of fun to start off by having our predictions for Halo this year. And before we get into that, what I would like to do is introduce our panel. First off, I want to introduce a returning special guest, Shpeshal Nick, a.k.a. Nick Stone, a.k.a. Shpeshal Ed. How's it going, Mr. Nick?
What's going on, boys? Yeah, no, it's all right, man. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Hopefully you had a good Christmas with the kiddos. Next up, yeah? Yeah? We made it. Yeah, we got to pay back Santa, right? Next up, we got Spartan Ursel, a.k.a. Soul Blazer. How's it going, man?
Hey, pretty good. Happy New Year, guys. I just took like a 2-hour nap, so if I might sound a little groggy.
Never start with excuses. Anyway, next up.
Or start with them only.
Yeah, don't start with disclaimers. Or we're trying to set our expectations, though. I got it. All right, so next up, we got Spartan Jesse, a.k.a. Don Cabeza. How's it going, Jesse?
I am doing very well. How are you, everyone?
Doing pretty good, Mr. Robot.
Hell, good.
Yeah.
No, this is my influencer voice now that I'm a famous YouTuber.
Um,
I spend all day just staring in the mirror, smacking my face, and trying to look excited for thumbnails. I can draw red arrows better than anyone. God, I'm the best.
we appreciate
Happy New Year.
We appreciate your best practices. Hopefully, that helps somebody that helps at least one person listening to this podcast. I'm sure that was worth it. All right, next up we have Spartan Austin, aka Proven. How's it going, man?
Doing pretty good. Excited to start a new year and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And
how's your mic going today, buddy? You got okay today?
It's doing a lot better.
he knew Nick was coming on, so he worked really
hard. Awesome. We have your back this time.
He called the internet companies, made sure that the Wi-Fi was working good. Yeah.
Good. You're not at McDonald's. You've gone to like Carl's Jr. or something like that for their Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so yes, I've upgraded.
And finally, we actually have a new guest today, somebody who's new to the XboxEra staff. And this is Spartan Knottian, a.k.a. Daniel. How's it going, Daniel?
Pretty good, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good, man. Good to have
nice
you
to
on.
Have you, yeah.
Yeah. So we got we'll have fresh perspectives. Because, you know,
the man we stole the name of our podcast from.
Yes, that's right.
All right, so yeah, thanks for being on here. We'll have to share that story eventually too. But for one thing I wanted to get into before we really got into our predictions, like I said, it is a very light news week. I think that's pretty common this time of year for gaming. There was a slight tease though this week, and that was coming from Keith David, who many of you probably know is the voice of the Arbiter. And I think this kind of just, obviously the tease that the Arbiter is going to be back is interesting. I don't know, who was, if people were already expecting him to be back in this and, what your thoughts are. But I really just wanted to really quickly go around the table and just kind of get your thoughts on it in terms of hey, is the Arbiter an important character to you? What does he mean to you? Historically, and is this something that really moves the needle at all in any of your minds? So I'm going to go ahead and we'll start off with Mr. Jesse, because Jesse, I know you read a lot of the books and you have a lot of the backstory and the lore. So we'll kind of get kicking this off with you. And yeah, he's a nerd. He's the biggest nerd.
I'm just jealous that I learned how to read and you didn't.
Who the hell needs to read?
Yeah, I just need to know whether. Just need to
You
know
can
whether.
even listen to them. They're there for listening.
That is
So
true,
just
but I
talk
don't know
about
if
it.
I do English good.
Oh, you're Australian. You do it the best.
They make up their own
Second
version of
best.
English. So Jesse, what do you think, man? Like, does this ring? Is this something that you were expecting, kind of based on what you've read so far? And
I mean, he was a
what-
big part of 5. They're not going to throw all of 5 away. So he's not like in the new book. There's nothing really about it. It's mostly the backdrop, not spoilery, is like Cortana and the Guardians are omnipresent in that they're always worried about doing enough to sort of get them to want to come to Reach. They're not there. They don't want them to come. So it's always an ever-present thing in the book. So obviously there's not like planet hopping and tons of communication and stuff. He's not in the book. He was in 5, a big part of the end of 5. I'd imagine if he's not actively in 5 himself, he'll be there as part of
Infinite.
flashbacks. Yeah, I mean, if he's not actively a part of Infinite after being actively in 5, because Infinite seems to be taking place entirely on the ring from what we know.
Yeah.
And a part of it is keeping that mystery, keeping it sort of, you don't always know what's going on. So I don't think you'd run into him actively. Maybe you talk to him. Maybe he's in a flashback. Osiris got from 5. They got broken up in a book. So I'm sure like stuff like that'll be referenced to or mentioned real quick. Why don't you see Team Osiris in all this? As far as a big active role, probably not, but definitely mentioned, maybe a small part.
His voice is so great, though.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah, it is.
So good.
I could listen to him forever.
I know,
I've been a
it's so
huge
good.
fan of his since They Live,
Thing.
John Carpenter movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he's in
I
everything.
don't know.
Yeah.
I'm playing Halo 2 Anniversary at the moment, and yeah, every time I have the Arbiter levels, I just love hearing him talk. It's
Yeah.
so good.
I think he brings back great feelings. To be honest, it feels like if you're going to do a throwback, and I know a lot of this is a throwback to CE, but I think it's also just a throwback to classics in general, like those good feelings. And I do think, regardless of the controversies at the time that 2 came out, I do think he elicits good nostalgia from Halo fans.
Well,
But
he puts so much into
Yeah.
his voice acting.
Yeah.
He puts so much into it.
He
I
became a
don't
huge
think
net
anyone would ever
positive.
mind if he's there.
Yeah.
He's the best.
He might have initially started off a little rough. I remember I was actually feeling when I first played Halo 2, I'm like, whoa, what the heck? I'm not the chief. But by the end of the game, he really grows on you. And now he's a huge net positive.
yeah. So what do you think then? So you think are you hoping to see a lot more?
I guess this was a prediction, so I'll bring it up again later when we bring that up. But my prediction is we'll hear him and we'll see him maybe in like holograms. We won't physically interact with him throughout the entire game. Not the base game anyway.
Not until expansions. maybe.
Exactly.
That's what-
Exactly.
Okay. That's an interesting
Interesting.
one. Hey, Mr. Daniel, new guy. What do you think, man? Any thoughts on the Arbiter?
I mean, he's definitely integral to the story. I mean, when they introduced that dichotomy in 2, that's what really elevated, in my opinion, the story of the games for the people who didn't read the books, like me and Jesse do. It introduced it to more than just good versus bad. You didn't have everything so clear cut, and so Arbiter, especially being voiced by Keith David, is such a integral part of the story. I think you have to have him in some way. Obviously, in 2 anniversary, they brought him back in. They did all those new cutscenes. With 5, obviously, he had his part there too. And I think, you got to have him in. I'm not sure if he's going to be in the gameplay itself, but I think it would definitely be a plus.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and something that really wasn't brought up here previously. But if you remember from 2, I'm sure everybody remembers, but from 2, that's Halo took a little bit of a turn for the gray, that gray area about like who you're fighting and trying to look at things from their perspective. And I remember that was a slightly controversial at the time too. But yeah, I think that is a good point because he does bring that dynamic, and you kind of wonder if that dynamic could get brought back because I don't know, it's been a little, well, I guess I wouldn't say it's been straightforward. It's been kind of messy, if anything, but that's probably the opposite way to frame it. But I do think it's kind of interesting when you're forced to kind of see things from a different perspective, and that is an interesting point. So I'll finish up by going over to Austin. I heard your kind of feedback on that. What do you think about the Arbiter in the next game?
I think it would be like a good idea to obviously bring him back. He's one of the most recognizable characters in Halo, and for Infinite, like I've always thought that Infinite was kind of going to be like the best of, like it was going to be kind of a collection of all the best things of Halo. Yeah. So I'm expecting him to, like, I don't know exactly what role he's going to play in the game, but like I always thought he would show up. Like there's really no reason.
Have we lost him again?
Uh-oh. What happened?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Jesus. Dude. That Macca's Wi-Fi, seriously.
No, I got a phone call. I'm on my phone right now. My bad.
I don't know. I feel like it's tough. Because right now we know that Infinite looks like a callback to Halo 1, which is mostly like a solo thing. You know what I mean? You're alone on in this planet, surrounded by enemies. You have no allies. You have very few allies. I feel like it's really difficult to do the Arbiter as a constant presence with that kind of theme.
Yeah,
maybe as a co-op character.
Yeah,
possibly, but that would imply he's there the entire time. I don't see that happening.
It's also Blue Team. Like, what happens to the other three people? We have no idea yet. They are a big part of the book. So I do wonder: are we going back to 4 chiefs for 4-player co-op?
I think we are. They did it with Halo 4 already. They'll probably do it in Infinite as well.
All right,
This is a plus for me.
Yeah, I think that's another really good point. And guys, like, it's still all the good points, so I'm not going to really add too much to it. But that what Proven was talking about with going with a lot of the best of the classic Halos, it just feels like they're trying to elicit as much nostalgia as they possibly can here. Obviously, I don't think we'll talk a little bit in a minute about some of the potential mechanics of the game and things like that. I don't think they can go all the way back to that, but I do see them trying to bring in as many callbacks and just fan service moments as they can do. But actually, I know you jumped in a little bit, Nick. Let me just see. Did you have any final thoughts on the Arbiter?
Yeah, I don't know. Story-wise, I'm not sure how they'd incorporate him. So the others are probably right. Maybe he'll be an expansion later on. I thought possibly as a co-op character, because Halo 3 does it. I'm trying to remember how Halo 3 does 4-player co-op. Isn't it all just like a
2 other elites for Chief, Arbiter, and 2 random elites?
Yeah.
And that's why I thought, would they do it like that potentially again? I don't know.
I mean, with 4, they went back to 4 chiefs. So 3 for 3 is not a stranger to using that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool, though, because the Arbiter would spawn with the Carbine, and the Chief would spawn with the BR usually. So it was nice. It actually made it a change in dynamic in the actual gameplay.
Yeah. Unless,
see that in a game mode.
Surely they wouldn't make one of the co-op characters that pilot, would they?
No, there's no way.
No, he's like your base of operations.
He's 100% the dude who just speaks to you in the radio, and his face shows up.
The way I think the co-op will go, it's probably just going to be 4 chiefs. You've got the pilot, and then eventually probably Cortana as like your home base, people giving you missions. And for other characters, you probably run into them in like a Destiny, they give you missions kind of way. Like Fred is working this area, and is working this area type of thing. But yeah, I think the main game, the way they showed it, you got them, their characters, they're there. You probably fight alongside them on missions and stuff. But for the main part, all of your co-op guys are
Do you think they'll go in the veins of Reach, where you're all playing Noble 6, but you have your own color, the color you chose for him or for her?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Be cool if you could use like your customized armor that you get from multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that would be a thing. I mean, it's because in multiplayer, like even the colors and everything, you're just red or blue most of the time. So they got to have ideas of where you're going to use this customization, microtransaction, and earning stuff to really make it incentivized. Like in Fortnite, you can jump into Save the World or Creative, and you have all your stuff. So
Well, they alluded to the similarities with Reach multiple times in that most recent Halo Waypoint. So, one of the biggest things about Reach was that you played your character, your Spartan, in multiplayer and in the campaign. So
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
Do
That'd
you
be a
think
good
they
way
would
to
go
do
back? Do you think they would go back to that though? Because I know one of the things that one of the focuses for, at least for multiplayer, was evening things out. That was one of the big complaints when they moved to 5. So do you think they'll kind of go back in that Reach direction?
I feel like Chief
what
will 100% be player 1. Player 1 will be Chief no matter what, my opinion. But players 2, 3, and 4, who knows?
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts before we go to our predictions?
Yes, I did want to mention a quick story of Halo 5. It'll take 2 minutes. So Halo 5 is about to release, right? It's Arbiter related. Halo 5 is about to release. I'm making sure I don't read any spoilers anywhere. I'm pretty excited, really excited. We all knew the Halo 5 hype before release. I think 2 days before it releases, I decide to read a YouTube comment. This was a mistake, obviously. It's always a mistake, but this was especially a mistake. And in the comment, the top comment was, "I can't believe Locke killed Arbiter." I read that and I went, no. Oh my god, I downloaded the game. I'm playing the whole game. I'm feeling depressed. I'm playing this guy and I love Arbiter. So what's happening here? The game ends and I'm like, wait, is it like a hidden cutscene? What's happening? And then I realized
You got trolled.
I got completely bamboozled.
There was some weird rumors that came out of that.
There was, and there was even the rumor about that too, which is why I felt it had some merit to it. Either way, that made me realize that rumors suck, comments suck, and even 3 for 3 wouldn't be that crazy.
Right. Well, there was a lot of Master Chief died in that as a rumor too.
Yes.
Leading up to 5. So yeah, that's keep that in mind.
Yes.
That probably was the only good thing about the Halo 5 story, was that those rumors ended up being false. But everything else about the story, I mean.
And then people are going like, "You played Chief for 2 hours," and I was like, "What?"
Well, that kind of was true, depending on what level you're playing on.
Fair. It had some merit to it. Yep.
Yeah, that actually wasn't too far off. All right, so we're going to go to our predictions. And so the way this is going to work, I'm going to go through a lot of different questions, and some of them are going to be from the community as well. As we go on through these, some of these will probably take a little bit more conversation. Some will be very quick answers, and we'll basically keep track of all these answers, and we'll come back to this at the end of the year after Halo releases, whatever date that is.
Sometime after November 15th. I'll just take wild guess.
You're right. So that's probably a question most people will get the right on. All right, but we're going to go ahead and start off with a question that we actually talked a little bit about last week. But I want to bring it up again because we have our contrarian on the panel.
You mean the person who calls things logically?
So and I think last week's conversation was a little bit boring because I think we all kind of agreed. But we're going to come back around and see if anybody's changed their mind. Because over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot more conversation about whether the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite will get canceled.
It will.
And over the last couple of days, there's been a lot more action around that. Around that thought, and I think Digital Foundry's come out with a couple comment tweets on that, saying that they think that they should just cancel the campaign, and maybe just give the old system a multiplayer. So we're going to go ahead. So we're going to go ahead and make this interesting and start off with Nick. Is the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite going to be canceled, multiplayer only, campaign with game design differences, or campaign with only aesthetic and performance differences?
Look, I still think the whole thing's going to be cancelled. I'd be completely fine with the multiplayer making it to Xbox One, because that makes a little more sense. But as I'm trying to remember where I explained it, I think it was on the XboxEra podcast. Like, I know everyone's gut instinct is, you're not just going to give up on 50 million Xbox Ones and all this other stuff. In the end, Halo Infinite is probably going to be, in terms of unit sales, Halo Infinite will probably be arguably the lowest selling Halo. Because people forget that Halo does sell a lot of copies normally.
Mm-hmm.
Game Pass. So you're not going to have that many people actually buying Halo. So the goal is going to be engagement. Xbox has made that very, very clear that everything is about engagement now. When you have base Xbox One owners downloading that game and seeing how horrible it looks and runs, they're not going to engage with it. And that engagement from 50, quote unquote, 50 million Xbox Ones is not going to be there. Your primary engagement is coming from Series S, Series X, and PC. So you may as well have the game not tailored for them, but focus on them. Like, I just think long term, it's not going to hurt that much to ditch Xbox One. Long term.
I think a big thing is going to be, is xCloud running on Series X hardware yet? And is it going to be tiered? Because they've talked before about how a Series X xCloud server can run 4 Xbox versions of a game. So if a big focus is on getting streaming going, having at least something of that game, whether it's the campaign, more likely the multiplayer and Forge modes running on the original Xbox, so that they can also push that into the streaming part of things.
But they won't want to hold Forge back like that. Like, Forge will be severely hampered by base Xbox One, and they just won't want to do that. Like, if you're not going to give Forge to base Xbox One, if you're potentially not going to give campaign to Xbox One, then just get rid of the thing. Like, you know, everyone talks about how games come together in the final 3 months, final 4 months, whatever it is. If they cancel Xbox One, like, I've given the deadline of March 31. I think that if they're going to announce it, it needs to happen prior to March 31, because that gives them a good 6-7 months to really, really dig in and take advantage of the newer hardware. I think that's a lot of time to do that.
I think
If they haven't announced it by then it's too late.
The whole year delay was mostly about giving them time to have the newer tool set, to have everything ready to go for next gen.
Yeah.
And if it is like a Horizon 2 situation or a Titanfall 1 situation where there is a focus on letting somebody else do it, but it's not a completely different version.
Which there is.
Yeah, like they have another company that's on it, that's already been on it for 3 and will have been on it for 4 years. So it is a very different situation from Cyberpunk, which is what Digital Foundry guys were talking about. Because Cyberpunk, they didn't bother with doing anything for the last gen version, whereas Xbox is taking the time to, in a not crunch-filled way, just get everything done. If it was get the game out by May, then yeah, you cancel previous gen more likely, so you can really focus on next gen. But with them pushing it all the way to November, I do think it's more likely to be more of a Destiny 1 situation, where it's the same game on both to start with, and in a few years you get a huge expansion and it's next gen only from that point, and they rebuild things and it's just next gen then, and it's just PCs that require an SSD then.
Yeah, so Jesse, do you think
Destiny 2 doesn't look like a next gen game though? Like, it's still held back by the fact that it's an older game that was made to run on older hardware.
I don't know. I think Destiny
insane.
2 looks better than most things right now.
Destiny 2 on the Series X
It does look really good, yeah.
It's actually probably one of the top, besides Gears, the Gears Hivebusters. I think it pops best on a 4K 60 with really good HDR. I mean,
so much of their pipeline is coming down to, can we make it work on everything? So, you know, that's what we're going to see. Can they make it scale the way they are trying to make everything scale?
Do you mean Destiny? Do you mean Halo?
I mean, Microsoft, like their engine, everything they're doing, because Destiny's already had the issue of content where just stuff takes way too long to render with the pre-baked lighting, as where Halo is going with the global system. So being able to make stuff and add things in is a lot faster.
Yeah.
Can they make it scale? That's what's really going to determine
and
if
that's why I think there'll be a deadline.
Version.
That's why I think there'll be a deadline. If they haven't announced it by March 31, then it's not happening. Like, they'll stick with the Xbox One version if they haven't ditched it by March 31.
Yeah. So
here's the deadline.
Here's where I think I say there's only a 10% or less chance that they would end up canceling it. But I only leave the door open for one reason. And I remember a comment from Phil Spencer. Guys, it's been a few years actually, but he says how Halo goes, Xbox goes. And I do think that the thoughts, the mind share around the quality of the game is more important than the actual sales right now. I would even say it's even more important than the engagement initially. And so I do think that if they think that the Xbox One version if it is suffering a cyberpunk thing, which again, I agree with Jesse, I think they're completely different situations. And I don't know that you can necessarily try to equate one to the other. But if there is a situation where, hey, we can scale this, but it's going to be an awful experience. People who are on Xbox Ones are going to complain. They're not going to get they're not going to get this banger that they think they're getting. It's not going to live up to what we want a Halo to be. I could see them canceling it just to save the brand, because I think it is that important. And we look at it, and again, this is an extreme example. It's not related, but you can see that with Cyberpunk. When it came out, it was a 91 Metacritic on PC, and then you can see what happened to the mindshare after it came out and people played it on the other version, on the other consoles. Now, again, I don't think that's fair to equate, because Halo is game designed. It's been game designed around the Xbox One. I don't think it is a CPU intensive in general.
Yeah, everything's like an island area, like Metro Exodus is. It was already set up for that.
And the extra things they're going to throw in there, like so like when I asked the question, one of the choices was, the campaign with some game design differences, and then game campaign with some, differences in aesthetics. Remember, like, this version of Halo is supposed to have a more robust wildlife and things like that. That stuff you can scale, and it doesn't really affect the gameplay. Like, you can just take out more of the little animals and birds and things flying around. You can
do the Halo 5. Everything animates like crap the moment it's 25 feet away from you.
Yeah.
Right, and it can be 30 frames.
At what point is it too many sacrifices? So Halo 5 runs at 60 on base Xbox One, and the sacrifices to get there are split screen, which we've been told is in.
Yep.
Now, I mean, what will the backlash be if they turn around and say, oh, well, split screen's not in base Xbox One, it's just on One X and next gen? Like, I don't know. I just think there's going to be too many sacrifices, too many compromises, and it's just easier if they just ditch it. Like, Halo 5's not the greatest. I mean, on One X it looks pretty nice, and on Series X it looks pretty nice, but Halo 5 was never considered a stunning game or anything fantastic looking. Doesn't have big, massive open levels, doesn't have split screen. So you've already got a ton of sacrifices for Halo 5 on base Xbox One. Now, Infinite is meant to be semi-open world, like you said, wildlife and all this other stuff. They've said split screen. Now people are going from Halo has virtually now become a 60 frames franchise after being 30 for so long. Are people really going to want to play Infinite at 720, 30 or worse? Like, I don't know.
That's a good question. So what do we think about that? Because I think we all said that we thought the Xbox One version is going to be a 30-frame game. Do you think that's an assumption, maybe going too far? Do you think that is a compromise that 343 would not be willing to make because of the gameplay impacts? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, one thing that we really haven't discussed too is that, just because we dropped let's say they drop the Xbox One version now, and don't tell anybody till March, you're not gaining. It's not like you get that time back. It's not like you get those resources back, especially if they've already been associated with another company. Right. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, we kind of make these decisions where I work all the time. So like we're moving from one supercomputer to another. What do we port? What don't we port? And so, it's kind of that fine balance. I see Nick's point, but I also see Jesse's. And for me, it's not about the 50 million or whatever Xbox Ones are out there. It's whether they can get, kind of like Jesse was saying, can they get xCloud working on consoles like Phil has alluded to before? and give those players a a similar experience without having to make all those sacrifices to, how many NPCs or how much environment change has been reduced or anything like that.
Yeah.
But they
I
did
think-
say that xCloud should be getting the Series X APUs this year, didn't they?
Right. Yeah, they
It
did.
also
but
depends.
So-
But they're behind on where
Yeah.
they would like to be for actual systems. So you wonder if priorities change at all.
yeah.
But that's,
Yeah,
that's another reason I thought they gave the full year. Because by the time November 15 comes, the theory is that they'll have those APUs in xCloud, which means Xbox One owners can play the Series X version via streaming.
some
So
APUs.
it's a win-win.
Yeah, I would say, Nick, on that point, I think they're going to have some APUs up there. I'm actually somebody who is pretty bullish on the future of streaming, but not necessarily the present of streaming. And I do feel like it is going to be important for them to get something up there so people can play it on xCloud. But I don't think they're, when you look at some of the chip difficulties they're already having to just not only fulfill the having enough Series X on the stores by the fall. I mean, when you start compounding that with having them in the servers, I think it's going to be a very limited, a limited rollout for
2021.
the xCloud. Yeah. I think really. Go ahead.
Okay. So we've known for some time now that Microsoft was ahead at one point with Series X hardware, were they not? Phil had taken one home like late last year. And what if the shortage isn't just COVID related? What if the shortage is also, we wanted to dedicate a lot of that hardware to
The servers.
xCloud.
I think
I
that
really do think. I think the shortage is Series X had an allotment that was bigger than Series S, and there is if it's Edinburgh, they're doing 3. Sony's only doing 1. So Sony can pump out more of their main dedicated machine, which is the disc version of the PS5, because there's hardly any digitals out there. Microsoft, less Series X, similar to more Series S's compared to digital PS5, but then also the third sock, which is their xCloud stuff. So I think that makes sense logically.
Yeah, I definitely Nick. I actually do agree with you on that. I do think it's taking up some of the supply. I still wonder, even with them having put some of those Series X APUs in the cloud, getting them ready for 2021. And again, this is just I don't have any real factual things to back this up. It's just when you think about the worldwide coverage, it's just that's a lot of hardware they got to get up there. And I think that's going to be something that gets more robust.
They're giving themselves a long time to do it, though.
Yeah.
So that's why I just think that's the ultimate win-win. Pump the Series X APUs in there and have Xbox One owners log into an xCloud app and play Halo Infinite that way.
Well, and even they were ahead. Like they had things ready to go before, but TSMC, who's making everything for AMD, they're doing a whole new line of CPUs, a whole new line of GPUs, keeping up with the previous ones where needed. Every PlayStation 5, every Xbox, all at once. Like AMD and TSMC are the ones who really led to everything being constrained. Even if Microsoft was ahead in their planning, there's only so much foundry time you can get, no matter how much money you have.
Okay, sorry. We're talking about streaming for a bit, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you jump in there, Sol.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you guys for a second there. That was weird. I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Crap. Funny enough, I feel that Nick has a point. Quite a big one here too, where assuming
just don't blow up his head anymore.
No, I'm saying assuming the console is holding it back, and assuming they make a much better looking game, much better playing game without the Xbox One, campaign wise, by the way, this is only campaign. I have no doubt the multiplayer release on both consoles. Playing through the Xbox One xCloud, assuming latency is as good as it can get in Stadia, because I tried Stadia a few days ago and it felt almost perfect. I was actually kind of mind blowing. I was like, wow, what the heck? I don't feel any latency at all.
That's the thing with the Series X. Their video encoder is infinitely better than what's on the One S blades right now, and running at 60 also helps. So those two things, the latency should be.
But assuming fantastic. They can get good latency where you can control the controller, fine. Xbox One players will actually get a better looking and a better playing game. than they
Yep.
would have if it was just their console.
1080 as well,
Yeah, you're right.
which
High
a
resolution too.
native Xbox One version won't be able to do. I don't know. Like, to me, it borders on making absolutely no sense to continue releasing this on Xbox One. There's no long-term benefit to it at all. I don't understand what, like, money's not an issue anymore. Let's be honest. We've gone beyond the point of money being a problem. Microsoft will keep pumping money into this until they get it right. So money is not a factor anymore.
Well, yeah, when Game
So-
Pass is 5% of the CEO's bonus
gonna say
payout,
that.
it's pretty obvious how important gaming is to them.
Yeah. So
That's right.
I
So it's not money.
go ahead. Yeah, no,
No, I
Nick,
was just going to say, like, money's not a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you on the money part. Like, obviously, right now they are looking totally towards the future, and so when you look at it that way, yeah, that makes logical sense. Like, the thing I would say though is that when you are building a subscription, the short term. I mean, I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like, if you ever like watch the trajectory of subscriptions over time, getting off to start beating out the rest of your competition significantly, and what you do like in the early years does have sort of an exponential long-term effect. So like if they get 10 million people, I mean that's too high a number. Let's just say they get 5 to 10 million more people on Game Pass that only have Xbox One. That 5 to 10 million will turn into, could equal 40 million down the road, because those people get their friends who get their friends over time. That's how the subscription model works. So when you see like, and Jesse pointed that out, that Satya Nadella now has 5% of his bonus income is tied to Game Pass, and that is. Oh, we're not recording?
All right, now that he's back in, we'll be recording.
We were still recording. Just I'm not sure whether it's my my headphones or my thing. I kept a note of where this is, so I'll just cut this off and the record. We're good there. I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, go ahead and do that point again.
Okay, so what I was saying is that with Satya Nadella, where were we? Where'd you cut off?
Yeah, you're talking about the bonus, the 5% Game Pass thing.
Yeah. All right. So, so basically, what I was saying is that I don't think there's ever been a time that a Microsoft exec has ever had gaming tied to his income that way. And it's not that that's going to motivate Nadella. It's quite the opposite. Basically, he's motivated Microsoft to focus on gaming, and the fact that it's specifically Game Pass tied to that focus is telling you everything you need to know. So like short term, there is a huge focus on getting those Game Pass numbers in 2021. I don't think there's anything, because I just follow the money. I mean, it's as simple as that. So it's hard to dispute that when you're tying in, again, for the first time ever, gaming into and the Game Pass subscription into Satya's bonus. So when I look at the numbers, so yeah, I do agree with you, Nick. I like long term, it's more important to protect the brand of Halo, and they can't really,
especially after what happened in July. Especially after what happened in July.
Well, what happened with Halo 4 and 5 even? I mean, it's on a thin thread in terms of
it's on that. Very thin ice. Very thin ice.
So if the Xbox One, okay, go ahead.
I've got a question for you all, and I'd like honest, truthful answers to this question.
Sure.
How many of you, and this is going to be purely anecdotal, but it'd be interesting to see, just out of the 6 of us, where this goes. How many of you, A, know base Xbox One owners? And B, of those base Xbox One owners, are they subscribed to Game Pass? I only know one left who has a base Xbox One out of the many Xbox owners that I know. I only know one left with a base, and he is not a Game Pass subscriber. All the rest are One X, Series S, PC, and they all sub to Game Pass.
I know 4 people that have Xbox Ones, and they're all on Game Pass.
I know
0.
I know one. My brother.
They do really want Series.
He has a base Xbox One.
I know like one.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
2,
he did get a Series S, so I guess he's not a base Xbox One owner anymore, huh?
Yeah, that's right. If he's upgraded, then he's not a base Xbox One owner anymore. I mean, I've got a One S in the house too, but I don't consider myself a base Xbox One.
But he got
owner.
the Series S for his parents' house, which he's staying for a couple months. So I don't know if he's going to switch back when he comes back home.
Yeah, I know. Well, actually, no. He just got a series. He went from 1S to an X, so I don't know anybody. But most of them is they're PlayStation and Nintendo fanboys around here. But again, I think Nick, that actually would prove a different point because I would argue that the majority of the Game Pass base at this point in time is Xbox enthusiasts, and Xbox enthusiasts have generally, if they could afford it, have upgraded from that 1 or 1S. Right. However,
more.
But here's the thing, and this is the key with again the subscription growth and how it ties to Halo, because you saw that with Netflix. It was when it started off, it was really like more of an enthusiast service. Like it was really just people that watched a lot of movies that got on it. Now it's like a casual thing, right? Because they got things like Stranger Things on there and other things over time before that. So Halo's really the first time. I know some people would argue Gears and Forza to a little extent, but I don't think the Game Pass awareness was really high when Forza Horizon hit. Halo is going to be the first time that a true mainstream day one game with massive mind share is going to hit that could drive those casuals. And the key is you drive the casuals there for that kind of game. And then once they're there, they're like, oh, let's try out these other things. And maybe they become an Xbox enthusiast or a Game Pass enthusiast once you get them. And that is, go ahead.
No, I agree with that sentiment, but that's completely undermined by the fact that it's going to be done on 8-year-old hardware. Like, you're not going to have Xbox One driving that.
Well, what if it's not?
You've got the next 7 months to migrate people over to newer hardware. Even if that's an Xbox One X, you've got 7 months to do it. Like, I don't think you can drive that sort of mainstream adoption with Xbox One, base Xbox One. I just don't think you can.
No, that's true. He's right. Yeah.
Like the Netflix thing doesn't. I understand the sentiment and I understand the logic behind it, and I'm all about logic. I completely get the Netflix argument, but Netflix isn't affected by what you're watching it on. Netflix is not. If you watch it on an iPhone, the quality is going to be the same as it is on your TV. It's unless you're paying for the 4K, it's going to be 1080.
But the driver for getting
Halo,
people in to play a lot is more multiplayer focused, which isn't as tied to the hardware. People will play Valorant on a toaster, and it's a huge game. If the biggest driver was the campaign, yes, and if eventually once Forge, if that really takes off like creative mode in Fortnite did after a few years, by that time, you've hopefully driven people to the better hardware and can just make it all about that. But to start with, I think the multiplayer will be fine on the old systems, even if it's running at 30.
Oh, we're talking about the multiplayer?
Well, the driver for trying to make...
Oh my God, I can't.
The reason for Halo to be not on previous gen.
Yeah,
I'm fine with the multiplayer releasing on Xbox One, for the record. Like, even though I think the whole lot should be cancelled, if they just left the multiplayer on Xbox One, I'd be completely okay with that. The campaign is more important to Halo right now in terms of image, in terms of branding, in terms of mindshare, in terms of reputation. Yeah. Right now, the campaign is the single most important thing, and still bothering with Xbox One, I don't care what anyone says, it's going to hurt it. Regardless of what anyone thinks, it is going to hurt it.
I got one last point. I know we've been spending a lot of time on this, but one last thing, and then I'm going to go around and make sure we got Proven and Soul's opinions on this as well. So just for the record, I don't think anything's going to get canceled. And one of the reasons why I do is that even with the campaign, Halo is just more based on its gameplay than even on the graphics. And I do think the feedback from the gameplay was good. If they can get it running at least at 30 frames, I still, when we talk about the experience of somebody's on Xbox One, remember that everything is relative. So if you're getting Xbox One graphics and frame rates, you're getting them across everything you're playing. So that experience is going to be relative. They do have an extra year to polish. Even if we go back to Halo 5, as we mentioned, there is some levels that are actually like the San Helios level is actually looks really good, and it's kind of open. So a lot of it is just time. So they have that extra year of time. They have a whole entire studio dedicated to it. I don't think it's going to get canceled, but I'm going to go around and make sure that I get Soul and Austin to kind of just throw their 2 cents and their prediction. What do you guys think? Anything going to get canceled on the Xbox One?
I just think it's kind of weird because when 343 announced the game 2 years ago, they introduced the Slip Space engine, and they kind of like talked a big game about how scalable it is, and it would be really weird if they ended up canceling their Xbox One version, after they said that the reason they went into a new engine is to make sure that it's scalable and it can play everywhere. But I think if they do cancel it, it probably just means that the Xbox One like just truly held the game back, and like I don't think they're gonna keep the game around on Xbox One if it like just looks terrible. Like I don't think it's gonna be a Cyberpunk situation where the game's a disaster. So like if they do release it because they were somehow able to release the game at like a playable state on the Xbox One.
So your final answer, you think it's going to be a playable state or not?
I think they're aware that like they need to get this game right. So they're not going to do anything to ruin the image. Like if they're not going to have a Cyberpunk situation where they're going to release
I'm turning him slowly.
Like
I can hear it.
Yes or no, proven.
I can hear it. I'm
it's
turning
funny
him
'cause
slowly.
I'm right in the middle of everyone. Like I think they'll release the game if it looks like, if the game looks like how it did in July.
Gun to your
on
head.
Xbox
Your
One.
life depends on it. You got to choose.
Your phone's life depends on it.
My phone's like, okay. I'm just, for now, I'm gonna say yes, because I think 343 has more experience with the Xbox One than like CD Projekt Red, but I wouldn't be surprised if they can at this point.
I'm more influential than you right now, Nick. All right, let's go to Soul real quick.
I mean,
What's your
okay,
final-
speak of the devil, Nick's actually kind of convinced me. Not for the multiplayer. For the multiplayer, I'm still standing strong. That will be on everything. But think about it
I'm
this
okay
way.
with that though.
Yeah.
The multiplayer I'm fine with. My focus is more the campaign.
I mean, if the game launched on November 2020, obviously there's no chance of a delay, right? But by November 2021, when you talk about 50 million Xbox One owners, not every one of those 50 million is interested in a Halo campaign. You know what I mean? I'd argue maybe 10 million at most are interested in a Halo campaign. By the end of 2021, you'll have that core audience already moved over, right?
Correct.
To the series console. So you still have that audience there for the campaign. My caveat is, assuming the servers are ready to go by November 15th, I think there's a very real chance that, the campaign's not going to come on the base consoles.
Okay, that's I mean, those are really good points. Despite the fact I still disagree, I think those are really good points.
And I
Nothing to do
think
with Nick.
they are building things to be like they just changed Gears 5 to make it so everything is its own bespoke install. I think that'll be the norm going forward, and that also makes it easier to have chunks that just aren't on previous consoles.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
eventually, like, okay, you've got the campaign can only be installed on next gen. This mode can be any gen. This mode can be any gen. That type of stuff.
Yeah. Hey, Daniel, I think we got your thoughts on it. Or I thought you said, but I want to just make sure. I want to clarify. Did you have any? What's your final thought?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they will. I mean, there's some absolutely good justification to do so, but and I think Nick mentioned this either a couple episodes ago or back on the XboxEra podcast. Like, people forget what 343 was capable of doing with Halo 4 on the 360 hardware in 2012. So people also forget that the return, I mean, you're talking 2-3 years between Halo 4 and Halo 5. They've had a lot more time. They've become a lot more familiar with the hardware. I mean, there's tons of things, and obviously you're not going to make additional output out of nothing. But I don't think there's any reason to do so yet. I mean, multiplayer, obviously, I think would be fine regardless. But I think the scalability of the platform, I mean, look at what Cyberpunk, right? The NPCs on Xbox One and PS4 are minimal compared to what you see even running back compat on Series S and X. So you already have examples of that scalability, although that's a really bad one. But you do have examples.
Well, it's a good and a bad one. It is a good one as well, because you're seeing it in action.
Right.
But it's a bad one because that game
they didn't do
it doesn't do the argument many favors from a purely visual and performance perspective.
This is what happens when you don't actually put the effort into it.
Right.
scenario.
Yeah, I'd argue that if that ran at 30 at a smooth frame rate, it'd be a little more digestible. But
Right.
Even
I don't know,
after,
I just
after
think
two
that's-
small patches, it's already like twice as good as it was.
And Halo is so much about its art too. Like I just when I was playing Halo 3 and Reach recently again, like just it still looks good and it's not technically great compared to today, but it just it feels good. Because just because I like the way the Halo plays and artistically, we forget about that too. Because a lot of the visuals, like Cyberpunk, I just think it's a really bad example. Because when you take out things like the ray tracing and all that, and you lose some of the detail, it just like that art does not come through at all. I do think Halo's art does allow for some more simplicity and still looking good.
It's not as realistic. The more realistic it is, the better everything has to be, because
correct.
You have more reference in your brain for like, oh, this should look like this. Not there's nothing fantastical about it.
Right.
Yeah, no, and the art style is intentionally kept.
I've been playing Immortals a ton, and like stylistically, the game's gorgeous. But you look at it from like an engine perspective, and it's fine. It's just it's all fantastical and it's really colorful. It doesn't have to have that same level of detail and everything.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, guys.
I think the whole most of the arguments hinge on the old base being so big, and I just think that's not what people think it is. I mean, use the PS4 as an example, right? So the PS4 has sold around 115 million consoles. Yet, if you look at the sales of all these Game of the Year, and oh my God, these amazing games, and everyone is playing these games, right? And yet, when you look at how many copies they've sold relative to the install base, it's not that much.
Nothing. Yeah.
Like when you hear 50 million Xbox Ones, you know how many Xbox Ones I've bought over this generation? I bought like 7.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be
you're
the
a
only one
maniac.
that's done that. Yeah, but I wouldn't be the only person that's
I've had
done
like
that. Like, I
4
would
here,
not be the only person that
6.
bought an Xbox One with Kinect attached to it, then maybe sold that off and bought One S, and then maybe sold that off and bought a limited edition 1S, and then thought, oh, the 1X, sold that off and bought a 1X. Like, I would not be the only person that's done that. So that 50 million, 115 million, that's never the true number. And you lower it even more when you're talking about active people. Like, Microsoft and Sony care about us, the 6 of us. We are the ones that are on our Xboxes daily. We are the ones that are buying V-Bucks. We are the ones that are buying Immortals. We are the ones that are playing Rocket League 1,200 hours. We are the ones they care about. And we are not 50 million. We are way, way less than that.
Yeah.
So I just think that sitting on that 50 million thing is a recipe for trouble. Anyway.
I do think we're going to have to move on because we got a lot of different topics to cover here. Really great points. I appreciate the fact that Sol and Nick already gave up a point for this contest. and Nick, you'll have to have some of us come finish this debate, because I think there's a lot of really, really good points that probably could go for the next hour and a half. But I want to make sure we get a chance to touch on at least a few of these other things before we come back on this again. Moving on to our next topic. And so when we think about Halo 5, one of the big opportunities and complaints about the game was the story. So I want to just touch really quickly on that. One of the things that for me personally, I thought there was really just a lack of, emotion and intensity and things like that. And one of the ways that Halo's done that in the past is they have killed off main characters. In fact, I remember in a documentary regarding the Halo 3 story, they talked about the fact that initially they didn't kill off some of the main characters like they did until they decided at the last second to do that because they needed to add some more emotional impact. So I want to go to that aspect of this. So we're going to kind of do a yes or no on these groups of characters and see what you think about whether we're going to see any major deaths. So we'll go out and do a roundtable on that. And I'm going to start with a different person on every one of these topics so that the copycats can't copy every single time. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Sol. We're going to go and focus on the blue team. First off, do you think Well, the blue team, the Cyrus team, or any other major characters like Arbiter, Lasky, do you see any major deaths in that, or do you think that that's something that, and additionally, do you think that's something that maybe Halo needs to bring back as some, sense of loss and a little bit more drama? So,
I sure do, buddy.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Ooh, just got here back in time. Sorry, I had to switch headphones. They were acting up. $15, and I guess that's what you get for going wireless. Okay, we're talking
You think
about
they're gonna kill
drama.
anyone?
What am I paying you people for? What are
you are paid.
Nothing. Which is
this 2-bit corporation, and I'm investing all this money into it, and this
Nick,
is what I
you
walk
get
into?
exactly what you're freaking paying for. All right.
Okay,
So,
I got it. Okay, so one thing for sure is I don't think 343 is or was, how do I say it? I don't think they were as smooth as they thought they were when it came to that Arbiter thing. Sorry, not Arbiter, that Locke thing. Locke is
Definitely
dead.
not.
Locke is definitely dead. Like, that was literally
being
his helmet
Poochie.
on the shoulders.
the toy leak.
He's
Yes.
gonna get poochied.
And it
Do you
gives us
think you
enough
could-
reason to like avenge him, and it gets rid of the character that people don't like. I would prefer it if they just fleshed him out more, if they were going to use him more. You know what I mean? I don't think anyone from Blue Team is dying. Not in the base campaign. I would say just Locke.
Okay, just Locke. All right, so we're going to go now.
Already broken up Osiris in the book, so it could be just him and not anyone else from it.
All right, Austin, I want to go to you because I know we didn't give you much chance in the last topic. So what do you think? What is who's your picks for people to get knocked off, or do you even think that's something that needs to happen?
Well, I think there's two. Like, if they're gonna kill people off, I think one possibility is they kill them off screen because, like, or if they're gonna kill them on screen, they're gonna have to rewrite them because the problem is I would say like the majority of people that played Halo 5 like didn't care about Blue Team or Osiris Team. So if they killed them off screen, like I feel like no one would care. So I feel like they almost have to kill them. If they're going to kill anyone off, it has to be off screen because there's going to be no like emotional impact. If they have some like huge cutscene like showing someone from Blue Team getting killed off, because I feel like no one's really going to care about that.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, well, if you kill him off screen, that is a waste, first of all. But so who's your pick then? Would you say who's your pick in terms of somebody going?
I agree. I think they're probably going to kill Locke because either they're going to kill Locke off screen and be like, "Oh, he died," or they're going to have to completely rewrite him to make him interesting. So it just depends on what they do. But I would say they'd probably kill him off.
All right, so we got 2 for Locke because of his helmet is on the toy. Let's go to Daniel. Daniel, what do you think, man?
Are we talking about for Blue Team or Osiris?
All of them. Like, do you think do you think we might see somebody killed off from multiple, like that, both of them, different major character, or?
I mean, yeah, I think Locke is kind of a shoe-in. I think they can't kill. Well, they could either kill Buck or not, depending on if they can afford Nathan Fillion again, as the Destiny showed. I think Blue Team is so iconic. I know Jesse and I are the only ones that read the books.
Damn it, I've read them too. Damn it.
Okay, my bad. All
Did
right,
you read Bad Blood?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean that's the one that pretty much breaks up Osiris, and Buck goes
Right.
off and gets
Right.
married. Spoilers: he gets married to the lady from ODST.
Oh, nice, Victoria. Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
so
I know these
I
names.
honestly think he probably won't be a thing in this one, or
Yeah. It was
mentioned
just a
in
Destiny
passing.
joke
Maybe.
more than anything else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Locke is there. I don't think they should kill anybody from the Blue Team. I think Lasky's gonna get it because Infinity, based on everything we've seen so far, is destroyed. So Lasky's the type of guy that would go down with the ship.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an easy one. Yeah. So you got Lasky and Locke
And Locke, yeah.
as your picks. Okay, cool. And let's see who else. Nick, who's your picks?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, Locke will probably get poochied. Like, they'll just kill him off screen and say that he needs to go back to his home planet. I'm not sure if they'd worry about killing anyone major. Again, my focus is still on they want to have as little backlash with this game as possible. So they're not going to take any gambles on killing off beloved characters. So it then restricts you down to who are the characters that aren't really, quote unquote beloved. So
Sarah
no one
Palmer.
likes Locke.
she's a goner.
Oh, is she? Okay, I don't.
No,
I
I don't.
remember her. I remember the name, and I kind of remember her, but I
She's
don't
pretty
remember if I
hated.
found her particularly annoying or anything.
It was I don't know, the community just kind of went overkill a little bit.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Not a
All right,
surprise,
so we
but
got another
He
vote
was
for Locke.
sassy to Chief in a cutscene. You can't allow that.
yeah.
What do you think? So, what's your picks? Do you have? Did you go first? Did I have you on?
I've never spoken about this topic. Let me speak again for another 15 minutes.
It wasn't, or Jesse. I need to go too. Jesse, who is your pick?
I'd be similar thing. Lasky on with the Infinity being shown up. Pretty much everyone seems to be dead, or there's like survivors strewn about the ring. Lasky being dead, or I mean, he's really like the only big person in command that we know of on there. So if you're going to take someone out, him, Sarah Palmer. There's not really a ton of other, and who cares about Tanaka or the other Osiris members? I mean,
Fail. Yeah.
yeah.
No way they get rid of Buck.
Yeah, no, Buck's safe off on his honeymoon.
He's like
hiding
prime
from
expansion
Cortana.
material too, right?
Yeah. That was just a joke about Destiny more than anything else.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Actually, Jesse, I was thinking about it. Do you think they might pull like a Keys vibe, kinda, with Infinity going down to the planet, and
it being a ring that was all about the flood and experimenting with the flood.
right? I feel like they might
having
pull that again.
Lasky get flood keys was always something I thought. Palace of Pain, he goes in there. If the Primordial's still around, even though he should be dead from the Forerunner trilogy. The Primordial was the race of beings before the Prometheans or the Forerunners.
Yeah.
There was one of them. They created the flood to attack the Forerunners after the Forerunners. There's a whole backstory there on that ring.
Worth
There's
reading.
a shit ton of lore that I hope they figure out a way to get good references of in the game itself proper.
But I meant more so, I feel like there will definitely be a mission called Rescue Lasky or Rescue the Captain or something like that.
Oh, similar to in a CE.
Yeah. Like very similar to CE, because I feel like we're
Eventually
getting
you have
vibes
to
like
punch through his decaying dead
I'm not
face
sure about the actual
and grab
end,
shit.
but I do think he'll be. In fact, I feel like you might slowly be building up your base again in the campaign.
What about Roland? Or is he going to be turned?
They didn't do it right away, and it seems like some of them can hold against it. And I do think a through line I've said before on Infinite is, with the teaser the way it was, is going to be finding a cured version of Cortana that's not evil, that is just Cortana. And so and her helping fight back against the I lost my humanity rampant cure version that was in 5.
Right.
Unless they completely abandon 5, I can't see Roland
They
not
didn't in the
siding
book.
with you.
Like the book is sort of a balance between 5 and Infinite, and Cortana and the Guardians are a big part of that book. So I think going to the ring is in a way probably trying to find something to stop her, especially if they give her the name the Harbinger, which was brought up. She's got her own name now, and then Cortana can come back, be your good AI going against the Harbinger. That's just my guess.
Good guesses. I think you mentioned somebody there. I actually think they may bring back Cortana just to kill her off for good, to send her off the right way.
Really?
Because that was, I don't know. So I do. Well, go ahead. What were we saying?
No, I was going to say for the record, I've been saying for a long, long time that Infinite should just be almost like a remake of CE. I mean, look, don't retcon everything. Like, retcon's the wrong word, but I think they will find an excuse to reboot Cortana. They'll just reboot her, and you'll have her back, and everything's just like CE. That's what I think they'll do. It might not fit in with the lore, and it might not align with whatever, but I just think they want to invoke CE as much as possible. And one of the trailers, the end of the most recent trailer where he walks towards what looks like, isn't it Cortana? at the end of that trailer.
Yeah, and there was a hidden
Cartographer.
sound. There was a hidden sound file from that was a QR code mashed into when the pilot first wakes him up. That QR code gives you an audio file that literally syncs up with the end of the trailer, and it's Cortana saying, "I don't know how, but I'm here. It's really me."
Yeah.
So yeah,
And that's what I mean. I just
Yeah.
think they'll completely reboot her.
Well, actually, so you did change my mind on that, because now that I'm thinking about it, first of all, you are right that they do want to bring this back to Halo CE. I feel like we're going to get something that's very akin to the when Star Wars rebooted. Like that.
Yeah, that's
a retread
exactly what I've been referencing. Star
They
Wars
just have
Episode
Cortana
7.
back up.
Yeah, it's going to be like that. And Cortana dying, even though people liked Halo 4's campaign, I would say, and again, I think with some of the hardcore Halo, it's not as much as some of the mainstream with the campaign. I do think that Cortana dying is associated with 343's stories in the previous games, and I do think they want to go the opposite direction. So
But that's a part of why Halo 5's story wasn't liked, because Cortana wasn't there.
Right.
Like yeah, it's just I don't know. Like
the Cortana, the evil AI thing was, I think we've touched on this in previous podcasts, but that was just really generic. It's not something that was really original or surprising or fun, and so I agree. I think they will bring her back and keep her around and figure out how to make that happen.
My guess is that the pilot in the ship will be in your ear at the start of the game.
Yeah.
And then one of your first major missions will end up with you finding Cortana again. She's rebooted, and then she becomes the one in your ear. Or maybe you have both of them.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. I feel like the pilot might be like, "Hey, I heard a distress beacon at this coordinate. Just want to check it out."
Yep.
So my prediction, I would actually disagree on the Locke thing. I understand, like, everybody wants him to be killed off or thinks he's going to be killed off because people were frustrated with him in 5, but they were frustrated with him in 5 because, number one, they didn't really build him up as a character.
Yeah, his character, like, he had references to being a deeper character that never got touched again. Yeah. And I think he's prime expansion material if they ever do the thing of killing off Chief or retiring Chief because he's 800 years old.
I don't think, like, it seems to be a popular opinion. I would actually make a prediction that Locke is not killed off, and that the reason they have his helmet is he got his ass whooped. Just like, if you remember if anybody played the Halo Wars 2, there was that one Spartan who gets beat to hell at the beginning, but he doesn't. If I remember correctly, even though
he still survives.
He survives, right? Yeah. And they grab his helmet and all that stuff.
Atriox just beats the irrelevant crap out of him.
Yeah, so I can see them beating the crap out of him, grabbing his helmet just like he did there, and that maybe is kind of a prelude to that. But I don't think you really get any emotional impact killing him off because you didn't build him up. But I do think there is opportunity to build him up because he does supposedly have a backstory. He is at least now familiar, right? So you bring him back in there, he is familiar. You probably could do some things over time, especially with expansion material. And also, I think, as an opportunity, as Halo kind of keeps bringing out material regularly over these next, decade, I guess it's going to be, that if they ever want to go to something that is a little bit more Spartan powers or something like that, you could always use a Locke backstory for that and build him up that way. So I do think they'll save Locke. I was going to predict actually Buck, but you made a good point that they married him off, and they married him off and they kind of split him off there. But I do think that they killed him off in Destiny. I think it would be kind of funny in a way if he just gets killed off and all Bungie's.
Do you think that Locke's issues partially come from the fact that Mike Coulter left so early on? And they had to use a different actor?
Well, the voice actor they got is a better actor than Mike Coulter is. Mike Coulter looks real cool. His acting's and they had a good voice actor. The problem with the story was entirely it got chopped up from parts and put together at the end. Yeah. Like the backstory for Locke, everything about him would have been fine and cool if it was a half and half situation like Halo 2, making it mostly Locke but not actually making Locke into a full character. Just kills it from the start.
They also kind of mess up the opportunity, right? With Nightfall, they had the opportunity to really flesh this guy out as a character, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, it was just that time for Microsoft and the Xbox division wasn't good, and now it seems to be. So I would put more faith into them taking the time, because 343's actual lore and backstory is very good. But getting that translated into the games just hasn't happened because everything's always so rushed.
Yeah,
And if they're not rushing anymore, they can do it.
Yeah, and
Right,
Locke has
right.
a lot of similarities with Noble Six, and everybody loves that character. You know, there's the Oni backdrop that they both have. I mean, he is a much better character than what we were given in 5, and I think that I'm hoping that it's more of a red herring than anything else about the damaged helmet and everything.
Yeah. So did anybody change their opinion? So how many we got for Locke still getting whacked versus not?
I mean, I don't
Anybody
want him to.
I'll change mine. I'm right. I feel like it's a bait and switch. But no, then again, he'll probably die at the end.
It's gonna be Buck. I'm
There
telling
are
you right now.
levels to it. It's like I could see it happening. I don't think it will. Kind of like I could see the Xbox One version getting axed, but I don't think it will.
Let's not get Nick
I'll
going.
stick with my guns.
You're wrong there, buddy.
Hey Jesse, you obviously have nowhere to
And,
go
you know,
tonight.
like, you could have a 4K UI, but 1080's fine. You don't need 4K.
No, it's not. No, it
This
isn't.
Call
is
that.
Jesse's gonna get fired before the end of the show.
You don't hide anything anymore. Wait.
All right.
That'd
So
be
did I get everybody's predictions? Austin, did I get yours?
Yeah, like half an hour ago.
Okay. I forget where am I anymore.
They've been
That's
good conversations with one extra person than normal, so our rhythm's thrown off a little bit. But I think it's been A-okay, buddy.
all right. As long as everybody's on record, so when we come back, nobody can be vague about what they said. All right. So
No one uses records anymore. I'm sorry.
yeah, that was a scratch that joke. Yeah, so like my final opinion, I do think it's going to be Buck and Lasky. All right, so let's go to what our next topic was going to be Cortana's fate, but I think we touched on that. So do we all think that she's going to be back, or does anybody
She was in the damn trailer. It'd be really weird to
She was in the trailer.
Yeah, no, she's coming back for sure, and I think they're going to set it up so that there's not even a possibility that she's going to die anymore. You know?
Well, that's going into the domain was always supposed to be the thing to cure rampancy,
cure her,
because
right?
their AIs could go forever, the Forerunner AIs. So it makes sense from their lore.
She's too beloved. Like everyone loves Cortana too much, and
Jen Taylor's voicing her in the show now, because the actor who filmed everything isn't going to be able to do all of that work. So it's just it's the same reason Chief never dies. She's gonna if the show hits, she's gonna be real big.
I feel like they kind of had to address her dying in Halo 4. Well, with the previous lore they had with the whole 7 years aspect. So that's something they realized, hey, we have to do this, and they did it well. If they try and pull it off again, then it'd just be cheap, honestly.
No. Just leave her alive now. People like her too much.
Yeah,
it helps. Like it helps the narrative. Like delivering story without relying on a million cutscenes is always the best way to do it in a video game. And that was one of the best parts about Cortana, especially in CE.
Yeah, just like Bioshock.
No, she's back, and she's back forever, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think we all agree on that. Yeah, and that does make sense. I again, she is one of the things that she is one of the mainstays of the classics, and
who doesn't love her?
Yeah,
like, seriously, who doesn't love Cortana?
Right.
Natural
Apple fanboys.
You know, that was actually another thing. The moment Microsoft named their the moment that Microsoft named their thing Cortana, at that point I'm like, yeah, she's coming back.
Well, did they kill that off?
They did. That's the funny part too.
Nah, Cortana's still around. I mean, I'm on a Windows 10 PC now, and Cortana's still around.
And she speaks to you every time you reinstall Windows.
Yeah, no, she does.
All right. So by the way, we had a longer topics list here, but I can now see that we needed 2 shows for this. So this is what we're going to do for the rest of today's show. We're going to split up our year beginning predictions into 2 shows. So anybody who can make it back next week, please come back next week and we can finish those off. But we do have some community questions that I wanted to make sure we had a chance to get to. And we can also include these as part of our prediction. So let me go to those. And all right. So first we have a question from Opachi, and he says, do you guys think the Zeta Ring will be the only location in Halo Infinite? We haven't seen any vehicles yet. Okay, he's got a few questions. So let's just start with that one. Do you guys think that the Zeta Ring will be the only location in Halo Infinite? Let's go ahead and start with Daniel. We'll start with you first this time.
Yeah, I think in the base game, I think it'll be the only location. Maybe after, if they are intending this to be a 10-year, expandable experience, then sure, we may venture beyond that after that point. But I think for the base game, it's going to be Zeta.
Okay. Good answer. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say it'll just take place on the One Ring. I think, again, base game minimum will take place on the One Ring.
Yeah, and actually, I'll jump in here a little bit. I actually think that it's going to be mostly on the first ring, but I do think they're going to at least introduce us to some other territories just to build some hooks for future content. So I think that would be smart. So maybe that's more wishful thinking than a prediction, but I think it'd be very smart to at least bring you to another planet, expose you to something that maybe is just like a little slice, vertical slice of a different
those
planet.
types of hooks that they put in are more likely now with the delay, where you can get back to cut content where
Right.
you were trying to get around and okay, we really got to just focus on the main campaign and we'll get to stuff later. Now, yeah, you can build in all of those little hooks a hell of a lot more than when you're rushing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this ring that they're going to, isn't a part of it broken?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So could those broken bits not be there? And
Other
again,
planets.
correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm saying something stupid, but could those broken off parts not be accessible landscape or environments? Maybe as part of DLC
Yeah, I think
or something. I don't know.
That's going to be part of the whole jumping around from area to area, and they're all cut off because it is rebuilding. And you might say the parts that were jettisoned and have flown away from it. You need to fix up your ship to be able to get to them. Those types of gating mechanics. I definitely think
it also prevents or makes it so it's not like a full open world game, right? You open up one map and then you go another part of the ring. It's a different map, that kind of thing.
Like hubs. I'm
Yes,
fine
exactly.
with hubs.
Yeah, if you played Metro Exodus, that's what it was. You had a bunch of hubs. They were big, they were dense, and you went between them. You never went back in that game. I think you'll go back. You'll have the opportunity to go back in Infinite. But yeah, it makes it both easier to scale, and you can make more bespoke and like classic Halo levels out of these things instead of it being this giant open world where you have to have weird gating mechanics for why you can't go to certain places. It's literally just, you can't fly there. That's it.
Because you could have cool scenarios where some species made this one piece of the broken ring their home, and you gotta, I don't know, take it over or get it back, or I don't know. I reckon it opens the door for lots of cool stuff.
And it opens it up for the biomes and everything. Like this is a more jungle area. This is a wintry area.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice solution for taking place entirely on a ring again. And having a better explanation now why on newer hardware you can't just go everywhere at once.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you, Sol? What's your predictions on that?
I'll make a slightly bolder one. I feel like almost the entire 10 years or however long this game is will be spent only on Zeta Halo. Or let me rephrase. No other planet. We might get teleported to an arc or something like that. But planet-wise, it'll be just the Halo. It'll slowly open up. We'll get a bunch of different biomes, a bunch of different areas, a bunch of different laboratories, facilities, etc.
Okay. And how about you, Austin? What's your thoughts, man?
I think for the main game, it's mostly going to be on Zeta Halo. But I think it was UOBM who said they might hint at some other stuff, like maybe some other planets, some other locations. But they're going to kind of hint at that, and then maybe in some expansions or whatever content they release later on, they're going to actually take us to the places that they hint at.
Yeah, I see. And I keep going back to that. The one thing I think about is, not just from a story perspective, but you got to think about it from a creative perspective. And I realize that you can have different art styles throughout the Halo ring, but I do think it makes it a little bit more challenging to do that. And when you have separate planets, it's the one thing, Star Wars or Destiny always like have these advantages that you can make things look very, very interesting because you have a whole nother planet and no rules. And so I do think that opens up possibilities. So I still think we'll get exposed to another planet. I mean, it might just be for like a linear mission or something that we can come back to. I do think that we talked about the throwbacks. I do think we're going to go up into another ship, just like you did in the Halo CE. So I don't necessarily consider that as part of the planet, even though it's kind of hovering over the planet. So I definitely expect at least one scenario inside it. Doesn't everybody think that you'll at least go inside a ship one time?
There is,
Absolutely.
to talk about it would be spoilery for the new book, but there's reasons to think that newer ships could be a thing the Banished have,
Right.
and fighting in those would be a thing. And I wouldn't want to say more without it being a spoiler.
Wait, that would still totally be Zeta Halo, no?
Okay, so Christ, I literally
No.
I can't.
I mean, in terms of like if we're on a ship on the Halo, that still totally counts as Zeta Halo.
No.
Yeah, but it's more like even when you go to a different planet, it's just a different tile set and a different skybox.
Aesthetic.
So when you're on a ship, it is completely different from being on the planet or being, there's a ton of underground stuff in Zeta Halo. So like those are, I would think, even if they're close to each other in the lore, they are different enough in the gameplay that they count as a different environment.
Oh, okay, that's not fair. 100% we're going to be in some kind of flood facility.
And I also think there's a chance that the Banished might have some cool, ridiculously new Forerunner toys, and we fight on those as well, or deal with those in some way.
And what if the Infinity crashed onto Zeta Halo, and then that makes up another level too?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of
the Maw Part
crap
2
stuff on there. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have everyone again. This is the reboot. You have to have that again. You have to have Maul again.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to go back up in Truth and Reconciliation. So yeah,
I've got no problem with that though.
I don't either.
343, and again, I found old posts of mine where I said all this stuff, like just remake those levels, tap into that nostalgia. Like 343 have a lot of damage to repair, and if that means, remaking CE, then so be it.
Yeah,
do whatever you got to do.
Yeah, no arguments there, and they have a lot of damage to rectify, but they also have a lot of nostalgia to work with. So they should use everything in their toolbox when it comes to that.
And the best part is though, 343 have one big advantage that most other developers don't, and that is that they absolutely goddamn nailed how Halo feels.
Yeah.
So gameplay is not a problem.
Right.
Gameplay is not an issue. Halo 5 feels amazing. It feels absolutely incredible to play.
Yeah, I'd argue 5's multiplayer is the best in the
the best they've ever done.
Proven's just turning red. His head's about to explode.
We actually have that topic for next time when we get to the so we're going to definitely say that will be to be continued. So we're going to stop on that topic and not take us into another hour new show. but yeah, I agree with you on that. All right. So did we get everybody's opinion on that? So everybody agrees that we're going to be going into ships, but I think you guys have said that.
My only other point would be I do wonder how much, because it is all about the Banished, they are introduced in Halo Wars 2, how much of the Halo Wars 2 other side humans would they show up, like the Spirit of Fire and all the Spartans that were on there that were lost for a long time. Like that could be a thing where we're fighting on the Spirit of Fire if they follow the Banished through, because the Banished are back. There's no other way to say it from the book. They're back. They're in the main. They got through because Halo Wars 2 ends with them fighting the Flood on the smaller arc, but then in the book, and it's already in the trailers and everything. They're back. They've made it back from the smaller arc. So I wonder what comes through from Halo Wars 2 with that.
Maybe we get a shot of the Spirit of Fire flying through the sky, and there's a level where you're in it and there's Flood everywhere. That'd be different, right? That'd be something we haven't seen before.
They will keep the need to consume other media in order to get the story to a minimum.
Yeah, that's what I see.
Surely that is a lesson.
Yeah.
Surely that's a lesson they've learned now. They may have references like that, whatever you call that ship.
The
It might
Spirit
be
of
floating
Fire.
in the sky. Yeah, it might be floating in the sky, or they might have little things in the background. But there is no way known 343 are going to be dumb enough to say, well, to understand what's going on here, you have to have played Halo Wars 2.
Or
Surely they're not going to do
they
that.
get better at actually incorporating some of that stuff in story-wise and explaining it in a way? Because that's what happened with 5 and 4. Like 4 was they messed up. There was just too much good stuff out of it, and they should have gotten it in there. 5, they just cut it all out, and instead it doesn't make any sense. In Infinite, can they finally get it where their expanded lore or their other games, they figure out a way to explain it in-game correctly for a change, so you can still use it? They get better about the storytelling? I hope so, and they have more time to work on it. Like maybe that's a cut thing where they talk about, okay, we're polishing and we're restoring things we wanted to do, but we wouldn't have had the time before. I don't know. I hope so, because it's really good. The story of Halo Wars 2 is awesome. The DLC is awesome. And if there's any way to incorporate that into the bigger picture, I hope they do.
All right.
Yeah, we know you hate reading.
All right, so everybody. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the biggest problem is that when Bungie barely put any of the expanded universe elements in the games, aside from cryptic terminals, 343 did their best to inject some of that in 4, and obviously, we can argue all day about how 5 bungled most of that, but I think the difference is at least they've tried compared to. Again, those cryptic terminals, for most people, aside from the hardcore, nobody read those. Nobody cared about. But they also didn't understand that the entire lore of the Spartans beyond just Master Chief. And I think that at least 343 is done better. And I think to Nick's point, because they have more time, they hopefully will interweave that a little bit better in the actual campaign than they've done in the past.
The campaign's done, though, isn't it? Or at least according to Joe Staten.
It's playable from start to finish, but it's also they talked about like this is a polish and going back and looking at things that didn't make the cut phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
And knowing that Staten's in there, I feel a lot more confident.
We talked about that. Yeah, that's something. I do feel that he will make sure that everything stays cohesive in terms of the story.
Especially because his Destiny story got completely torn apart and thrown away. And I can't imagine, like, he likes building all this stuff up, and he had a full story he lost. And if he can, you're going into Halo, which was his baby for a decade, going back in there and really giving it the time it's due. I should have thought about that more on the prediction of, if they're willing to delay it a full year to be able to finally have a Halo game that gets the time it needs. It's like it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Proven, did I get your call on that? Do you think we're going to any other planets, or are we going to stay there and just the Zeta Halo and the
I already talked about.
Okay, gotcha.
A little while ago.
Okay. So really, I think I was the only one that said another planet. Everybody agrees though that Zeta Halo and some ships otherwise.
And
that probably makes
it, but I think 99% of it would be on Halo.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only thinking from the standpoint of, again, keeping everything cohesive, going back to the classics where you're not jumping all over the place, because that was an issue of 343 in the past. So part of me wants to say no, but it's like, man, that is an opportunity. So it's probably more just kind of thinking it might be neat to lay seed. But you could also do that too without actually going there. You could talk about different planets. You could, show somebody calling you from a different planet. So there's other ways to set that up. So I'm actually going to change my answer, just because it makes too much sense to keep it. They've already made a point to say that they want to keep this a tighter, more personal story. And I think when you're jumping all over the universe, that takes away from that, and it does.
And I've actually talked myself into the fact that the Banished are so strong when they never were before comes from everything that happens in Halo Wars 2 on the Ark. Mm-hmm. So I do think it probably will have to be referenced in some way. Like, where did they come from? They weren't a thing. They're just a small mercenary group with a very strong leader who had actually talked himself up way more than he had ever actually accomplished anything. But now they've killed off the Infinity. They've taken over a Halo ring. They beat the UNSC, as the trailer states. So I think you do have to explain how that happened, and that comes from Halo Wars 2.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second part of the question from Opachi. And that is, we haven't seen any vehicles yet. What vehicle from the Banish has to be in Infinite, and what should be the weakness? And Jesse, I want to start with you because I think you kind of started with this. So what do you think to his question?
I wonder, because there, like, a big emphasis on the this engine, the slipspace engine, was being able to just have way more on screen at once, and the Banished have a very large repertoire of not seen before things from Halo Wars 2, like the Reavers, and they've got like really cool mech looking shit for going after aerial vehicles, you know, because it's an RTS, so you've got your pros and your cons for each one. So they came up with new vehicles to go after air, new vehicles that are good against vehicles, new vehicles that are good against ground troops. And so I think we'll probably see quite a bit of them, because the first one we saw was a Banished ship in the gameplay demo, straight out of everything looked for them in Halo Wars 2. There's going to probably be water stuff. They showed in the very first trailer an underwater vehicle that looked UNSC. So I wonder, I think, I don't know a specific one. I just think there's going to be more variety than we got in 5. 5 really didn't have much until they started adding things back into Warzone with the rec cards. It was a very small, and I think in this one, there'll be a much bigger emphasis on a wide variety of UNSC versus Banshee / Covenant / Promethean vehicles, because the Banished have Promethean tech. That's a big thing from Halo Wars 2 in the book. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be more variety, would be my guess on it. Way more.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And number one reason is just more toys to sell. It's something Star Wars learned. And actually, if anybody Googles Banished vehicles, you'll see a bunch of toys already. So I think that gives you a little bit of clue. We'll probably see a big robot spider. I'm just kidding. There's some things on 4 legs and things like that. So yeah, I honestly don't have outside of what you were saying, Jesse, like I don't really have any specifics, but I would say that this would be an opportunity for them to really reinvent the vehicle sandbox. So I think we're going to see a lot of different things across the board pretty frequently that have different, weaknesses.
Yeah, if you're a Halo fan listening to this, and I believe Halo Wars 2 is on Game Pass, like you can just take a look in there and you can get an idea of what the Banished is like to be prepared for the game. And it's also a very fun game and a very good campaign and one of the best DLCs. It rarely goes on sale, called Awakening the Nightmare, but in there is sort of the story thrust for where I think Infinite's going to lead off from. So it's worth consuming.
Yeah, those are good points. And a lot of people actually forget about or don't talk too much about the DLC. It seems like it wasn't played enough. So it would be interesting to see if they throw that.
They're going to have to explain it in Infinite. They just like in some way. I hope they do it well.
They need to throw that DLC into Game Pass, and that's another topic. All right, hey Austin, what do you think on Apache's question?
I mean, have they confirmed that they're going to bring back the chopper yet? I don't know if they've actually confirmed that.
No confirmation.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when I think of vehicles, like I think specifically for like multiplayer, because that's what I usually play more of. Like if they're going to introduce some Banished vehicles, I hope they're unique, because one thing I think a problem that sometimes with Halo, like there's always like, so for example, like for guns, there's the human rifle, the Promethean rifle, and then the Covenant rifle. Like it's basically like a different skin of the same gun. So if they're going to introduce new Banished vehicles, I hope it's not just a Banished version of a Warthog where it looks different, but it basically functions as the same thing. I'm hoping that they introduce like a new unique vehicle that's like specifically like this is only for a Banished. Like it's not like a Warthog with the new skin or a Pelican with the new skin or whatever.
I think the gameplay demo showed they're looking to have that variety and difference, because there were some very different types of guns in there.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a huge focus. I know they talked a lot about the sandbox. I think Stinkles has talked a lot about the sandbox, and that's something that Proven. You bring up a really, really good point where like there's just too many guns in some of the more recent. As much as I really like the balancing that's in like the multiplayer of Halo 5 and things like that, there is a lot of guns that are similar-ish, or you use them in similar-ish situations. And if you remember, CE didn't have as wide a selection, but everything felt very unique. Everything from the Covenant felt very unique in terms of the vehicles and weapons.
Yeah, the one thing about Halo is like there's so many possibilities for cool and interesting guns, but I feel like a lot of times they're just like, well, we're just gonna make this specific version of the same type of gun. Like for Halo Reach, like the grenade launcher was like legitimately a really good weapon because there was really nothing like it in previous Halos. So I think for Infinite, I'm hoping they take advantage of the fact that they can create like really unique weapons and vehicles, and they actually like go all out for it.
The issue is though, from a design perspective, and I always assumed that the reason they basically made Covenant version of human weapon and Promethean version of human weapon, my assumption was that was an intentional decision to avoid them having to worry about distribution. So basically, because what happens is balance becomes an issue then, right, as well. So you're either forced to make the human weapons better than all the rest anyway, rendering the others useless, because the human weapons are the ones you're going to get the most. Then if you make them all basically the same, then you don't have to worry about it. Like, because if the human weapons are going to what you're going to spend the most time using, and you make them better than all the other weapons, then what's the point of the other weapons? If you make the other weapons better than the human weapons, and you don't distribute them often enough, then people get pissed off at that, because it's like there's this cool gun that the Covenant have, and I barely ever get it throughout the whole game.
Well, that was always the problem with the human weapons, is because you're not fighting humans, you're fighting Covenant. So you kill a Covenant, you're only ever getting Covenant weapons.
Yeah.
And that's why my assumption was that's why they did that on purpose. They just made all the weapons the same, but just reskin them. So the carbine was basically the BR.
Right.
And I just always assumed that was on purpose for that reason. So they didn't have to stress about, oh God, how often do we give them this gun because it's better than that gun, and da-da-da-da-da. If you just make the human equivalent in Covenant and in Banished and in Promethean or whatever, then it takes that stress and hassle out of it. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
With the change to the setup of levels in this, I do wonder if there's going to be a way to choose what weapons you get at like a weapon locker or something. Because, I mean, they're changing the level design enough. We're having a way for you to get the weapons you like. Maybe you even unlock the ability to... Because there's some very light RPG stuff with the... some of the menus they showed, and like getting the grapple shot and some of that could be a way to alleviate it, where you can have very different guns, but at certain points you go up to it and you can choose, okay, I really want a rocket launcher right now, type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I just always thought that was intentional, but anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anybody else have any feedback on that one before? By the way, I think what we're going to do, because we do have a hard stop in 10 minutes, we are going to save some of the community questions for the next podcast. We will try to get to one more. But does anybody have any final thoughts about that Apache's question before we move on to our final question?
Now, this was the banished vehicles, right?
Yes, banished vehicles.
Well, my only final thought is I really hope they add some kind of graphical airlines for that one banished flying vehicle in the demo.
One that had a very robotic pattern.
The one that felt like it was a kid holding and just moving it from the sky.
Yeah, you know what? That is the God. That's going to get us on another tangent, so I won't do it. But that is the one image that really stands out almost as much as anything from that trailer, as far as something that needed a lot of things. So it looked like a little toy on a string going around. Agree. So any final thoughts on that before we go to our final question?
Nope.
No.
All right. This might be a little hard hitting for our last question. This one is from Jesse's wife. Is there any specific life event that you equate with any of the Halo games? Man, that's kind of a deep question. We might need like a whole podcast for that. All right, we're gonna go with you first, Jesse.
It would be similar to like my favorite Halo memory, which is I always loved the series. I played it a ton, but it really hit hard for me on the release of Halo 5 when she got her limited edition Xbox and we played through everything with my brother, and it was the three of us just shooting the shit, having a really fun time, and that's sort of what started us doing that with co-op games. So that memory of Halo is the strongest for me by far emotionally.
Yeah, no, that's actually really awesome. How about you, Sol? What's your life event that you associate?
Nothing super major. I have a couple. Like, for example, I grew up playing split screen with my brothers. So it was a great way for us to, get together, have some fun. That and Smash Bros. But I think the main thing for me would be in high school, like 2011 or so. I would organize Halo LAN parties like every month or every other month. We were playing Reach at the time because that was the game that released, and it was just so much fun. I remember there's this picture that was on Facebook at the time. It was us playing Halo, but the picture had basically everything you'd expect from a LAN party. It had the projector I was using, which was this beat up old thing that made this massive vibrating sound unless you covered it. So it had like 6 textbooks on it. It had everything was dark, and it had this pasty white leg just right next to it. And that picture right there kind of just summarized the entire LAN experience for me.
Those are always awesome. Austin, I know you've had about half the lifespan of most of us here, but anything that you really associate with Halo?
Were you born when one of the Halos came out?
Yes, I was born 5 years. I was 5 when Halo Combat Evolved came out. So, but I remember. Yeah, I remember. I think I'll always associate it because I played Halo 2 split screen. It was like 4-player split screen. The multiplayer on, I think it was Waterworks, that map, the Big Team Battle map. I would play that for like hours upon hours a day. So like that's the thing. When I always think of Halo, I kind of think about that because that's based. Halo 2 was like the first game I really got into. Yeah, so I kind of always associate with those memories.
Not bad for a short lifespan. How about you, Daniel?
So every new release, my brothers and I used to, whether we were on the OG Xbox or on 360 eventually, and 2 of us were in college, that was kind of like our go-to thing is we'd get a new Halo, we'd play, through the whole campaign together and then online. And then Reach was the last one we all got to play because I lost my little brother years ago, unfortunately. But 4 was like 4 was a wreck for my older brother and I because obviously the whole Cortana separation and it's gotten better in the sense that now my wife and I every time there's a new Halo or Gears we go through together, Destiny as well, and so we've kind of been able to turn it around. But yeah, like it is always this, we get a bunch of pizzas and whatever and just celebrate the new launch every time there's a new one. So we were hoping that would be this past year, but obviously 2021 has rolled around and we still don't have it. So I'm hoping, we can all get online again and go through it.
Yeah, man. Sorry to hear about your loss, but yeah, those are definitely good memories, and hopefully when 2020 rolls around, we can celebrate some of this in person too. So,
yep.
How about you, Nick? What's your like moments?
Well, okay. This is both gonna be out there, and it's gonna fall under TMI, but
that's figures.
I'm gonna answer her question far more specifically because she said life event. So, okay, so for Halo 4, right? I was extraordinarily excited for Halo 4 and booked a week off work, a full week, which is the most I've ever done for any video game. Usually it's like one day. So Halo 4, I booked a whole week. And as you can imagine hold on, not Halo 4. Sorry. Correction. Master Chief Collection.
Oh,
Got my
ouch.
Halos mixed up.
Okay.
Oh no!
So
So
I
you got into one match in that week.
Yeah, I booked the whole week off for Master Chief Collection
Ouch.
because I was very excited. And as you can imagine, that was a little bit of a disaster. But not only like this week was just the week from hell. So I booked the week off for Master Chief Collection, and my brother-in-law came over and we were playing a little bit. So we tried to do co-op because obviously the multiplayer wasn't working. Something that some people don't know about me is that I'm a bit of a housewife, and I clean a lot, and I'm a neat freak. And I was washing dishes after a bit of a session, cut my finger open on a glass. I broke the glass while I was washing it and split the webbing of my hand between my index and middle finger. So my brother-in-law had to drive me to the doctor to get my hand stitched up. And then a couple of days later, like part of the reason he was staying over with me was because he had to drive me to get a colonoscopy that week. And I wasn't allowed to go alone. Like I wasn't allowed to drive home myself because it's very disorienting. So that was my week of Master Chief Collection. The game was broken. I cut my hand open and got a colonoscopy.
So how do you even play Halo anymore?
I know. Like, he has like the worst. He has like the anti-nostalgia when it comes to that game.
It was such a. I was so upset that I booked a week off for that game. Like I was just.
Oh my god!
Like I effectively lost a week of leave from work for that stupid game.
Oh man, that is.
I'm gonna add something because I totally forgot about this till now. So when that game came out, I lived in a house that didn't have access to good internet. So my download speed was like 3 megabits per second. So it took me a solid 3 days straight to download the game. And then right in like the final 1% of the game, it failed. So I had to re-download it again. So it basically took me took me 6 days to download the game. And then I couldn't even play it at launch. I was like, all right. So I just wasted 6 days.
Yeah, I don't think very many people have great stories of the Halo Master Chief Collection launch. So mine, I guess, real quick, just as not as a real specific thing, but I do remember I've made a lot of friends around the time Halo 2 launched on Xbox Live, and a lot of them are still buddies. Not a lot of them, but there's still a handful that I consider friends now that I met through that. So that's one of the things that really always stands out to me, kind of, just kind of watching through the E3s together with people that I now consider friends. But really, if I was really tied more specifically to life events, kind of like what Nick just did, the one that stands out the most to me is when Halo first launched and OG Xbox first launched. I think I mentioned this like maybe in our first or second show. It was I was not supposed to be buying anything at the time. My ex was expecting me to save up for a ring. So I wasn't allowed to buy any video games. God. I couldn't even buy junk food.
No wonder she's the ex.
Spoiler alert. No.
No wonder she's the ex.
But man, like we were actually shopping, looking around at rings. So we were looking around before I actually gave it to her. We were looking around at rings, and then I remember then she went off and did some other shopping, and I went into a GameStop just to kill some time while she was doing other things in the mall. And I happened to see Halo Combat Evolved running on a kiosk, and I was like, holy shit, what is this? And I remember I went home that night and I could not stop thinking about that game. So lo and behold, she gets back from work one day. We were living together at the time. She was working a different shift from me at the hospital, and I was there playing Halo CE, and I said, "Honey, guess what? My parents bought me an early Christmas present." So that's the thing that I think about. I think about Halo CE, and yeah, obviously that was not by the way, it's not the way to start a relationship, as you can
relationship built on truth and trust.
So that's not
till you die, man.
It's all good. But so that's my life story. So I think, did we get everybody on that? I know we're now at our hard stop time. Did I miss anybody?
That's
All right.
everyone.
All right, guys. So, yeah, so we had a bunch of things on our list that we wanted to touch on, but it's I guess that's good news for next week. So if we have another slow news week, we have a lot of things to cover, and so come back
2
for
weeks.
part 2 of our. Yeah, come back 2 weeks from now to listen to part 2 of our 2021
Yep,
Halo
and we'll save
predictions.
Mort's question and Khalid's question for next week.
Yes. Yep. And thanks, guys, for sending in the questions. We'll definitely we'll make yours the priority question to ask next time. And once again, if you've gotten this far in the show, actually, I'm going to let Sol sign up. He always does a better job. So take it away, Sol.
Thanks for watching, like usual. If you've watched this far, then chances are you've already heard this, you know this. If you really enjoy our content, please like, comment, post in the forums, let us know. That's generally where we get our questions these days. If you don't know, we have a forum specifically from the website, XboxEra forums. We usually post a day or two or so before we do the podcast. If anyone has any questions, feel free to post. More questions, the merrier. It's very rare that we don't get to all of them. I think this is the first time that's happened.
My bad.
If you really enjoy our content, you can check out the Patreon. It's on the website. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.
All right, guys. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's have a better
Ciao for now.
2021.
Boy.
Happy New Year.
Later, guys.